Hello everyone, welcome back to Chemistry CC for you. So, as promised, today here we are with the super preparation series for the MSc Chemistry entrance examination. And according to the poll, the most requests were received for CUSAT and CUSAT entrance examination. So, we are beginning with CUSAT CAT 2020 preparation super preparation series. So, first of all, you might be wondering this exam was cancelled a few days before, and still we are trying to bring up preparation strategies for the same exam. Why? The thing is, this is the time that you have to use to bring out the best in you. And this is the time when you can actually prepare to succeed. Because many students might be thinking that these exams are cancelled permanently and they'll stop their preparation. But you should not be one among them. You should be the person who's preparing till the very last moment when the exam occurs. So this actually is just postponed, and I'm very sure in the coming months the CUSAT CAT 2020 examination will take place. It won't be cancelled in such a way, and nobody will be jeopardize the future of many students. So grab this opportunity and prepare as much as you can within the time available and get the maximum rank possible in this examination. Now let's begin. And as I have promised before, in this series we are having questions from previous examination and model questions that have the probability to come in this year's examination. Let's begin. So the first question here is nitration of benzene and C6D6 occurs at the same rate. This indicates that. So if the rates are same, what could we actually understand? If is the process of nitration a spontaneous process, or is it because it follows in first order kinetics, or the reaction follows a second order kinetics, or is it the CH bond breaking is not the rate determining step? So the answer is option D. CH bond breaking is not the rate determining step. So we know that the rate is determined by the slowest step of the reaction, and that would be the rate determining step. In this process of nitration, the nitration of benzene is the rate determining step and not the bond breaking. That is, after the hydrogen, when the nitro group comes to the ring, that particular step is the rate determining step and not the bond breaking of CH or CD. Now let's go to the second question. The decreasing order of reactivity towards substitution by electrophile of the following is. So we have four compounds given here: nitrobenzene, chlorobenzene, toluene, and benzene. So what they have given here is they have given the names of all the there are certain side groups which can be either electron withdrawing or electron donating groups, and from that we have to understand which is having the most reactivity towards the electrophilic substitution. Now the order is actually 3 greater than 4 greater than 2 greater than 1. So toluene has the highest reactivity towards substitution by electrophile, followed by chlorobenzene, followed by benzene, and finally we have nitrobenzene. Now let's take a look at the reason for this behavior. So we know that EDG, or electron donating group, increases the substitution by electrophile reactivity. That is, the electrophilic substitution reactivity is increased by electron donating group, while with electron withdrawing group it is decreased. Now let's take a look at each of these group, which is nitro, chloro, and toluene. That is, toluene actually means methyl group. So nitro group has minus I, this is minus I and minus R effects. So both these effects will be decreasing the substitution by electrophile reactivity, because this is an electron withdrawing group. Whereas methyl is an electron donating group, and it has both plus I effect and the hyperconjugation effect, which increases its reactivity towards electrophilic substitution. And finally, we have chloro group. It is having minus I and plus R effect, but the minus if I effect decides the reactivity, whereas the plus R effects decides the orientation, and that's why this comes as the third in the series. So we have to understand that chloro has conflicting effects. One is minus I and plus R, and the thing that we have to understand is the minus I effect decides the reactivity and not the plus R effect, and that's why this comes as the third in this series. Okay, and that is after benzene it is coming. That the reason is because minus I effect is the one which decides the reactivity. Now let's go to the third question. So this is one of the previous question. So here we have a benzene ring, sodium C2H5OH, that is ethanol is there, and liquid ammonia, and we are getting a diene as well as C2H5ONA, and we need to understand whether this is an example of Birch reduction, Wolff-Kishner reduction, or Clemmensen reduction. So the answer is Birch reduction. So you should keep this reaction in mind, that is from benzene. That so what is Birch reduction? It is an organic reaction which converts arenes to cyclohexadienes. So we have cyclohexadienes from the arenes. It can be either benzene or derivatives of benzenes. Now let's take a look at what the Clemmensen and Wolff-Kishner reduction are. So Clemmensen reduction actually is a reduction of ketones to alkanes using zinc amalgam and concentrated hydrochloric acid. So the conversion is from ketone or aldehydes to normal alkanes, and the reagents are zinc amalgam as well as concentrated HCl. And for Wolff-Kishner reaction, again it's a carbonyl compound to alkanes, but there is reaction with hydrazine to form hydrazone, and further it is treated with base to give the alkanes. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. These three reductions are extremely important. So Birch reduction actually gives you the cyclohexadienes from arenes. Clemmensen reduction gives you ketones, gives you alkanes from ketones or aldehydes. But here the reagent is zinc amalgam and concentrated HCl. And Wolff-Kishner reduction, we get alkanes from carbonyl compounds, but the reagents here are hydrazine and base. Now the fourth question, which of the following types of drugs reduces fever? So we have analgesics, antipyretic, antibiotic, and tranquilizers. So the answer is antipyretic. So let's take a look at what each of these drugs are. So tranquilizer is a medicinal drug taken to reduce tension and anxiety. So it is kind of treatment for the depression and all the mental issues. And I have previously done a video on this part, and I'll be giving the link of chemistry in daily life in the description box below. Please watch that, it will be helpful for you. Then antibiotic actually works against bacteria, and antipyretic is to reduce fever, and analgesics is a painkiller. I have discussed all these in details along with examples in the previous video, so do watch it. It would be giving you the almost idea about everything that could be possibly asked from this part in the CUSAT examination. So that is a must watch video, you should watch it. Now to the fifth question. This is a very interesting question and has been asked multiple times in various examinations. If the CO bond length in carbon monoxide is 1.128 angstrom, then what is the value of CO bond length in FeCO5? So what we have here is the bond length of carbon between carbon and oxygen in the free carbon monoxide, which is a C triple bond O, which we know. We are very aware of it. This is carbon monoxide. So next what we need to understand is the answer here is 1.15. Why? So this metal, iron, makes a back bonding to CO. So this actually means a synergic effect. That is, the ligand will be giving electrons to the metal, and metal gives its electrons back to the ligand as back bonding, and thereby there is a synergic effect which strengthens the bond between CO and Fe. So what happens? The bond between CO and Fe will be strong. At the same time, this particular bond will be weakening. Once more, we have metal here. So this bond, if we are naming it as A, this A bond will be increasing in strength, while the B bond will be decreasing in strength. If bond strength decreases, the bond order decreases, but the bond length will be increasing. So that is the relationship. Bond order is inversely proportional to bond length. So here the bond order will be decreasing, and as a result, bond length will be increasing. But it is not so high that it will be 1.72. So 1.72 cannot be the answer. There will be a slight increase from 1.128, which is 1.15 angstrom. So that is the correct answer. And the reason is the back bonding that Fe makes to carbon monoxide, which creates a synergic effect and strengthen the bond between CO and Fe. Now the next question. Which of the following would have maximum CO bond length? Again, a very comparable question and can be possibly asked this year. So we have MnCO6 plus, FeCO4 2 minus, NiCO4 and COCO4 minus. So the answer is FeCO4 2 minus. Let's take a look at why this happens. So the first point, that is CO is a neutral ligand, that is it does not have any charge. So the whole thing depends upon the charge of the central metal ion, that is the bond length depends upon the charge of the central metal ion. So Fe has a -2 charge, CO has -1, Na has 0, and Mn has +1 charge in the given complexes. So what happens is, if the metal atom has more negative charge, then it will be having more tendency to do the back bonding. So if the back bonding tendency increases, then like the previous question, we can understand that the CO bond length will be increasing. So out of the given complexes, Fe is having the most negative charge, and therefore it will be having the maximum synergic bonding, and therefore the bond length would be maximum in FeCO4 2 minus. So what is the point that you have to understand here? As the negative charge of the central metal ion increases, there will be an increase in bond length also. If we write bond length as BL, BL also will be increasing. That's it. So this point you should keep in mind. And this is the case when all the ligands are the same. You should keep that also in mind. If it is different, there will be other considerations as well. But here it is the only consideration. Let's go to the seventh question now. The ionic mobility of alkali metal ions in aqueous solution is maximum for. We have all the 4 alkali metal ions. The answer is Li+. So what is the reason? So out of these 4, Li+ is the smallest, and we know that if the size is small, there should be maximum mobility. But in aqueous solution, it is reversed. Why? Because in aqueous solution, there will be hydration taking place for these alkali metal ions, and the degree of hydration decreases with the ionic size as we go down the group. So maximum hydration will be there for Li+. So degree of hydration will be decreasing down the group. As a result, the smallest ion will be the one which is most hydrated. So Li+ will be most hydrated, and therefore the mobility of ions will be reversed. That is, as the size increases, the mobility decreases, and therefore the solution, the ionic mobility of alkali metal ion is maximum. The answer is not this. This is the least. So it will be maximum for Rb+, least for Li+, and most for Rb+. So since this is aqueous solution, Rb+ is the right answer. Smallest for Li+ in. So therefore, this will be the order. Li+ less than, Na+ less than, K+ less than, Rb+ is the increasing order of ionic mobility in aqueous solution. So our answer is option C, Rb+. Very simple question asked previously also in almost all the examination. The metal present in vitamin B12 is. It's very simple. It's cobalt, and that's the reason why vitamin B12 is called as cobalamin. So it's very important, and this is one of the largest vitamins present in our body. And we'll be discussing more about this one later. But still, I have previously done some videos, a few videos on this part as well, biomolecules. I'll be giving the link in the description box. Please do watch that one as well. It is easy for your quick revision using those videos. Now the ninth question. This is a very important question. So benzene and toluene forms nearly ideal solutions. So at 200 degrees Celsius, here we have degree. So at 200 degrees Celsius, the vapor pressure of benzene is 75 torr and that of toluene is 22 torr. So the partial vapor pressure of benzene at 200 degrees Celsius for a solution containing 78 gram of benzene and 46 gram of toluene in torr is. So what are the things that is given to us? We have the vapor pressure of pure benzene and pure toluene. Then we have the given mass of, that is in the mixture, what is the mass of benzene and toluene. That is also given. From this, we need to figure out the partial vapor pressure of benzene in the mixture. So we have to do a series of calculation. Let's see how it goes. So first of all, the molar mass of benzene is 78 gram and the molar mass of toluene is 92 gram. Now, the number of moles of benzene will be given mass by molar mass, which is 78 by 78, 1. Similarly, for toluene, it will be 46 by 92, which is 0.5. Further, the mole fraction of benzene can be given as moles of benzene divided by the total moles in the mixture. So mole fraction of benzene will be N benzene divided by N benzene plus N toluene, which is the mole fraction in the mixture. Okay. Now that can be written as 1 divided by 1.5. Now this equation is the most important. So the partial pressure can be written as the mole fraction into pressure of the pure solution, the vapor pressure of the pure solution. So here for the pure solution, which is already given that 75 torr is the value, and we have found the mole fraction, and therefore the partial pressure of benzene is equal to 50 torr. Option A is the right answer. So what we have done, at first we will be finding the number of moles of each of the components in the mixture. Then we will be finding the partial pressure of the components, and then we will be finding the vapor pressure by multiplying the mole fraction with the vapor pressure of the pure solvent. That's it. Very simple but very important question. So now let's move to the next question. Here we need to determine the osmotic pressure of a solution. Here it is given, it is dissolving 3 into 10 raised to minus 2 gram of K2SO4 in 2 liter of water at 25 degrees Celsius, and it is completely dissociated. All the values of the constants are given. Are the gas constant is given as 0.0821 liter atm per Kelvin per mole, and molar mass of K2SO4 is given as 174 gram per mole. Now let's see. So osmotic pressure pi can be given as W2RT by M2 into V. So W2 actually means the weight, the given mass of the solute, and the molar mass of the solute is given by M2. Then R and T we already know, and V is the volume in which we are actually preparing the solution. Now all these values are given. W2 is given as 3 into 10 raised to minus 2 gram, that is, which is the mass of K2SO4. Then M2 is the molar mass of the K2SO4. Then volume is 2 liter. That is, we have prepared this in 2 liter of water. And T is 25 degrees Celsius or 298 Kelvin. Now, we just need to substitute all these values in this equation. Once we substitute, we will be getting, this will be substituting, and this is the after substituted value, and further our answer is 2.1 into 10 raised to minus 3 atm. Always be very sure of uh, the unit that we are writing, because atm is the unit here, since our constants are all given in atm. So that is the osmotic pressure. This equation is also very important. Keep this one in mind. Now, next question is from colloids. Lyophilic salts are, so we have 4 options here. Irreversible salts, they're prepared from inorganic compound, coagulated by adding electrolytes, and self-stabilizing. So the answer is self-stabilizing, and let's take a look at some points regarding lyophilic salts. So the examples are gum salts, starch salts, also protein in water, also polymers in organic solvents, etc. So thereby for this second point is wrong. It is not formed by inorganic compound. Instead, it is formed by these kinds of compounds like gum, starch, and other. Second thing they have given is lyophilic salts are stable and do not get precipitated very easily. So it means that it is self-stabilizing, and they do not need any additional stabilizing agent to preserve the salts. And also the dispersed phase can be brought back into the solid state by simply mixing it with the dispersion medium. So it is reversible. How? Because we will be having a dispersed phase and dispersed medium, and in order to make this component back to solid, we just need to mix these two once again. So it is easy to reverse the process of formation. So irreversible solids is also a wrong statement. Finally, it is not coagulated or precipitated easily. So already we know that. So therefore, these are hydrophilic salts are also known as reversible salts. This okay. So these are the points we should know about lyophilic salts. Now to the 12th question. This is very important question from chemical kinetics. So we have a reaction was found to be second order with respect to concentration of carbon monoxide. So the carbon concentration of carbon monoxide is doubled with everything else kept as the same. The rate of the reaction will remain unchanged, or whether it will be tripled, increased by a factor of 4, or whether it will be doubled. And that's the so the rate is given that it is depending upon, so it is second order with respect to the concentration of carbon monoxide. So the first rate is K into CO square. We can write it like in this form, where this is the rate constant and this is the concentration of carbon monoxide raised to the power 2. The second, what happens, the second rate is when the concentration of carbon monoxide is doubled, which becomes K into 4K, that is 2 square will be coming outside the bracket, 4K into concentration of carbon monoxide raised to 2. And therefore, K into CO square is R. So 4 into R will be R2. Therefore, it will be increased by a factor of 4. That is the answer. So what we have to do, we have to first write the rate equation based upon the information given, then include the second rate by changing the concentration and try to bring the first equation back. Then we can understand by factor of what number did the reaction rate change. So the next question here is the number of orbitals in a shell with n equal to 5r. So n is the principal quantum number and we have the principal quantum number as 5 here. Now let's see, the answer is actually 25 orbitals. Let's take a look at how this happens. So when we have n equal to 5, the L will be n minus 5 value. So it will be 4, 3, 2, 1 and 0. That is 0 to n minus 5 will be the value of L. And each of this L will be having ml ranging from minus L to plus L. That is, further, let's take this further. So when L is equal to 4, ml can have values from minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, which makes a total of 9. Similarly, for L equal to 3, there will be a total of 7 ranging from minus 3 to plus 3. And therefore, we have a total of 25 orbitals. So we need to calculate the number of ml and add the sum, like we need to find the sum in order to understand how many total orbitals will be there for a given principal quantum number. This is a very simple question, but still many of you just confuse it with some simple formulas, but you have to try to work this one out and then find the answers. Now let's go to the 14th question. Citral on treatment with KHSO4 gives. So these kinds of questions, why this is important is because in biomolecules there is a limited number of things that they will be asking in a MSc level, and there will be in the MSc level they will be asking only a limited number of things, and one among that is the name of these kinds of compounds, which is common reaction of some biomolecules like citral. So here the answer is p-cymene. So the thing that you have to remember is not the mechanism of the reaction, but the structure of these compounds. So let's take a look at the structure. So this is citral. When it is reacted with KHSO4, p-cymene is formed. So this is the structures of the component that we have to remember. Now further, let's take this question a bit further and think about a possible question that can be asked from the part of citral this year. So the citral reaction with KMnO4 and chromic acid will give what? That can be a good question. So citral undergo oxidation with KMnO4 followed by chromic acid to get acetone, oxalic acid and levulinic acid. So these are the structure of these compounds. So citral we have already learned. So acetone we already know, and oxalic acid also is non-compound, but levulinic acid should be the thing that you should keep in mind. So this is the structure of, this is COOH. This is actually acid. So levulinic acid, citral. So KMnO4 followed by CrO3 oxidizes citral to form this particular compound. The side products are also important because sometimes they ask, they give a series of side products in the options and ask to identify the correct side products for this particular reaction. So this is a very uh, possible question this year. Keep these structures in mind and these names in mind. Next, 16th question. Sodium salts of pseudo-halogens X and Y gives colorless solutions in water. The solutions of X produces intense red color with Fe3 plus ions, while solution of Y gives intense blue color with ferrous and ferric ion mixture. The pseudo halides X and Y are respectively. This is a very interesting question because these components whose colors are given here, that is the one with Fe3 plus and the one with ferrous and ferric ion mixture. This is very important and very common things. So the answer here is SEN, SCN minus and CN minus. Let's take a look at the components. So Fe3 actually react with SCN to give ferric thiocyanate, which is the intense red colored complex, and that is the intense red colored complex. Further, Prussian blue is the one which is mentioned here with the intense blue color, which is a mixture of ferrous and ferric ion mixture with cyanide. So Fe3 4 times complex with Fe2 CN6 3 times. So this is the formula, chemical formula of Prussian blue. This is also something that you should keep in mind. And Prussian blue is produced by the oxidation of ferrous ferrocyanate salts. So the pseudo halogens which forms red color with Fe3 plus ion is SCN minus, and the one which forms intense blue color with ferrous ferric ion mixture is CN minus. Very important question from the complex ion parts. Should memorize this and keep in mind these names, ferric thiocyanate and Prussian blue, along with their chemical formulas. The type of interaction that holds layers of graphite together is. It's a very simple but still a very important question. The answer is van der Waals force. It's not ionic or hydrogen bond. Here what we are talking about is not how the carbons are linked together, but how the different layers of graphites are linked together, and that is held together by van der Waals forces of attraction. Next question. The hybrid orbitals with 33% of S character are involved in the bonding of one of the crystalline allotropes of carbon. The allotrope is. So these are all allotropes of carbon. That is, they have different physical forms. They are consisting of carbon itself, but their physical arrangement will be different. That is the reason why graphite is conducting and diamond becomes the hardest substance in the world. So carbon black, graphite, diamond and gas carbon. So the answer is graphite, and what actually happens is it is sp2 hybridized. The 33% of S character occurs in sp2 hybridization. That is, it is involving the mixing of one s orbital and two p orbital. Thus the orbital contribution is 1/3 or 33% in sp2. If it is sp, it will be 50%. So sp2 hybridization corresponds to graphite here, and therefore 33.33% of S character is involved in the allotrope graphite. Next question. C22 is equal to E C2 sigma V into sigma V. So C22 means we are rotating a particular object 2 times in the principal axis, that is at 180 degrees. So this is group theory, a question from group theory, and this is very important. Symmetry of objects is really important. E is actually identity, and this is one rotation among the in the principal axis. Sigma V is it is the reflection of around in the principal plane, that is the one which contain the principal axis, the plane reflection about the plane in which contains the principal axis. This is 2 times we are reflecting it. So what is the answer here? Let's see. E would be the answer. Let's consider this is an object and we are rotating it. This is the principal axis of this object. So we are rotating it 1 time. So what happens? This will be turning and coming into the back side. That is the back side of this object. I have colored it as black. So this once it is rotated, what happens? It will be giving the back side, and once again if it is rotated, the same object is coming back. Okay, I hope you understood. The next, what happens in identity, what happens, the same object is repeated if we are operating it 1 time. So 2 times C2 2 times, as well as E generates the same amount of symmetry. That is the same symmetry is being obtained when we are doing both these operations. That is why C2 2 is E. Once again, let's see. We have an object. We are rotating it once. Then once and we get the back side of this object, we are rotating it again in the principal axis and we get the same object. In identity, we are doing nothing. It is a do nothing operation and we get the same object. So as a result, since these two are equivalent, C2 2 will be E. Now 20. If any 2 rows or columns are the same, the value of the determinant is. This is a very general question, and this answer will be known to all of us even from our 11th standard onwards. The answer is 0. So if any 2 rows or columns are the same, the determinant will be 0. Next question. If the absorbance is 0.0510, the percent transmittance is equal to. So absorbance is given as minus log to the base 10 into transmittance. This is not percent. Remember, this is not percent transmittance, but transmittance. So transmittance is equal to 10 raised to minus absorbance. So here transmittance is 10 raised to minus 0.0510, which is the absorbance, which is 0.889. So percent transmittance would be 88.9%. Transmittance is 0.889 and therefore percent transmittance is 88.9%. So absorbance is equal to minus log to the base 10 transmittance. This is very important formula. Let's take this further. So a solution shows a transmittance of 10%. So percent transmittance is given here. When taken in a cell of 2 cm thickness, calculate its concentration if the molar absorption coefficient is 12,000 dm cube per mole per centimeter. So let's see. When percent transmittance is given, the absorbance can be written as 2 minus log to the base 10 percent transmittance. Okay. So 2 minus log to the base 10 into 10, since the percent transmittance is 10, which is equal to log 10 is 1, 2 minus 1, 1. Now, we also known as absorbance can be written as epsilon L into C, where epsilon is the molar absorption coefficient, which is already given. The length of the cell is also given as 2 cm, and we need to find the concentration. So all the values are given. Now we just need to substitute this as absorbance divided by epsilon into length. So 1 by 12,000 into 2, which is equal to 4.16 into 10 raised to minus 5 mole per decimeter cube. So this is one formula. When percent transmittance is given, the absorbance can be written like this. And when only transmittance is given, it will be just minus log to the base 10 transmittance. Okay. So these two are things that you have to keep in mind. Let's move forward. In allene, the hybridizations of the terminal and the central carbon atoms are. So the terminal carbon atom has sp2 hybridization and the central carbon atom has sp hybridization. So we have here this is CH2. This carbon as well as this carbon is having sp2 hybridization, and this is having the sp hybridization since it is having double bond on both the sides. So allene, there are 2 types of carbon, with one having the sp hybridization and the second having sp2 hybridization. Now the 24th question. Which of the following reagents can be used to oxidize primary alcohols to aldehydes? So this is not a complete oxidation, but we have to stop the production, the oxidation at aldehydes itself. So which of the following combination is the right answer? Let's take a look at. So CrO3 in anhydrous medium, it is used as an oxidizing agent for doing aldehydes. So one is definitely a reagent which is used to oxidize alcohols to aldehydes. Then pyridinium chlorochromate or PCC, this is also abbreviated as PCC. It also oxidizes primary alcohols to aldehyde. So 3 is also a reagent which can be used to oxidize primary alcohols to aldehydes. Then third, primary alcohol passed over copper at 300 degrees Celsius is dehydrogenated to aldehydes. Again, fourth is also a reagent that can be used to convert primary alcohols to aldehyde. But acidified KMNO4 is actually not stopping at aldehydes, but it is directly giving us carboxylic acid. So that cannot be used as a reagent to give aldehydes from primary alcohols. So KMNO4 in acidic medium cannot be used to oxidize primary alcohols to aldehydes. So our answer would be 1, 3 and 4, which is given in option B. So CrO3 in anhydrous medium, PCC and heat in the presence of copper at 573 Kelvin will be the right answer, with which converts primary alcohols to aldehydes. Now towards the 25th question. The calcium carbide on reaction with water produced. It's a very simple question. Calcium carbide will be giving acetylene, which is the triple bonded compound or alkyne, C2H2. And this is the reaction. CaC2 plus 2H2O gives CaOH twice plus C2H2. Further, next question. On addition of a small amount of KMNO4 to concentrated H2SO4, a green oily compound is obtained, which is highly explosive in nature. Identify the compound from the following. So what happens? This is the reaction which occurs. With concentrated H2SO4, KMNO4 gives Mn2O7, KHSO4 and H2O. This Mn2O7 is the highly explosive compound that is formed from this reaction, and also it is green colored oily component. So option A is the right answer, Mn2O7. So KMNO4 plus 2H2SO4 concentrated gives Mn2O7 plus K2HSO. Now the 27th question is, the degree of unsaturation of fat can be determined by means of its. So option A, it's iodine number, B, octane number, C, saponification, and D, melting point. So the answer is option A, iodine number. So iodine number or iodine value, it's a quantitative, it's a measurement for the degree of unsaturation of a fat. So iodine number is mass of iodine in grams that is consumed by 100 grams of a chemical substance. From this, we can understand the degree of unsaturation in a given fat. Now, this is the 28th question. So, match the following. This is something that you have to learn and keep in mind, because these are very important point groups and molecules. You have to learn the point groups of a very few molecules. Out of this, the 4 of these are really important. The others we will be discussing soon in one of the videos. And I have also done a previous video to identify the point group of any given molecule. So here H2O is C2V point group and CH4 is tetrahedral point group. If you know these two, we can actually, at least two, we can find the answers from the options itself. So 4, 1, only one option has 4 connected to 1. So option A itself is the answer. H2O is C2V point group, CH3Cl is C3V point group, and C2H4 is D2H point group. So option A is the right answer. Methane has the tetrahedral point group and TD point group, and H2 has C2V point group. These two should be there in your mind. Apart from this, you also need to know that benzene belongs to D6H point group. These are the very important molecules and the point groups that you have to remember. This is the answer. Now, let's take a look at the 29th question. This is from the P block elements. Again, I have done a video on this part. You need to watch it. I'll be giving the link of the video in the description box. The number of POP bridges in P406 and P410 respectively are. It's 6 and 6. I'm not giving the structure here since I have previously discussed this one, and you need to watch that to really understand what happens in the P block element in each of the portion. What are the various things that you have to keep in mind while you are doing a question. So that is the 29th question. And now the 30th question or the last question is, the S branch lines arises from dash transition. So we have 4 different transitions here: J to J plus 1 level, J to J level, J to J plus 2, and J to J minus 1. So what are the values what are the values here? We have delta J. The selection rule in the first one is delta J equal to plus 1. The second one is delta J is equal to 0. And the third one, delta J is equal to plus 2. And the fourth one, for D option, the selection rule is delta J is equal to minus 1. So let's see what are each of these transitions corresponding to. So J to J plus 1 corresponds to the R branch. When delta J is equal to 0, here delta J is equal to 0, it's Q branch. When delta J is equal to plus 2, it is S branch. And when delta J is equal to minus 1, it is P branch. So these are very, very important questions. I have taken all these questions from a range of different topics so that it will be good for you to learn and have a good practice before your examination. And as I have said in the beginning, this is not the time to be tensed regarding the exam, but be relieved that you are getting more time for the preparation and make the maximum use of this time. Learn as much as possible and give it your best shot. And we'll be coming back in the coming days with other super preparation videos. Hope this one is helpful for you. Please like the video, subscribe the channel, and hit the bell icon for latest notifications. Thank you so much. All the best, everyone. Prepare well.